So those are students at Stony Brook University in New York demanding their school send them home from campus, but pay them back first. The rapid spread of the deadly coronavirus has prompted at least 200 colleges and universities across the country to either cancel or postpone in-person classes, drastically transforming U.S. higher education in a matter of days.
Joining us now to discuss is digital reporter for Campus Reform, Eduardo Neret. Eduardo, always good to speak with you about, these issues that are really facing college students, especially at this time when classes are canceled. You've been out and about on college campuses. What has been the immediate response that you've heard from students?
So as you said, the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform right now is monitoring this list of schools across the country. You said over 200 that are now taking action for the rest of the semester. So we're seeing a lot of schools, maybe extend their spring break by a few weeks. We're seeing other schools close classes like Michigan State University for 4 to 5 weeks. Some schools, like we saw in the video, Stony Brook, Harvard's another, are vacating campus completely. They're shutting down dorms, and that raises a lot of questions for the future. So obviously the main concern right now is health and safety of the students. But a lot of students are rightfully saying, hey, we prepaid in advance for dorms. We prepaid in advance for our meal plans. College is already very expensive. Are we going to get our money back? Where are we supposed to go? So there's a lot of concern right now. Campuses are pretty dead right now here in D.C. But before the coronavirus broke out, I was on a campus, did talk to students before. I was filming a video. And a lot of them, there was a mix. Some at the time were not very concerned. Others were very concerned. They talked about the fact that they hoped this crisis moves quickly because they would prefer to be on campus to learn. So right now, that was a few weeks ago. Right now, most campuses across the country seem to have fewer and fewer students.
Millennials are getting called out by the coronavirus task force. I want to play this where you get your response. This is Dr. Birx from the White House administration, the task force. Take a listen to this.
I want to speak particularly to our largest generation now, our millennials. I have the mom of 2 wonderful millennial young women who are bright and hardworking, and I will tell you what I told to them. They are the core group that will stop this virus. They are the group that communicates successfully, independent of picking up a phone. They intuitively know how to contact each other without being in large social gatherings. We're asking all of them to hold their gatherings to under 10 people.
Eduardo, what do you think about that? A lot of responsibility there put on a specific group of people, an age group of people.
Well, she's exactly right. And unfortunately, what we're seeing on a lot of campuses and campus communities is that students aren't taking this seriously. So, for example, at West Virginia University, University of Dayton, we saw 2 different conflicts between students and law enforcement because just as classes were announced that they were going online, or just as it was announced that classes were going to be canceled, we had hundreds of students congregate in different block parties, students going out, drinking, having a good time. And again, it just shows that students aren't taking this seriously. It's very important right now that we do social distancing. There's a reason why campuses are shutting down, and students don't seem to be aware of that. I also want to point out what this could mean for higher education in the long term. Right now with classes going online, it just speaks to how and what the cost of education is actually going to if these colleges and universities can switch to online learning in the span of a week. And so if this goes on for several months, it'll be interesting to see moving forward if higher education will move more to an online setting in the coming years.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned online. My siblings both go to college within the University of Missouri system. That university has decided to cancel all in-person classes right now. So that's going to be potentially a heavy lift on teachers to prepare for online lessons, as well as students remaining accountable for that. Are they prepared to really educate students to the degree that they would in person, that they would do online?
I would say it depends on the course. It depends on the college. Right now, some schools have been able to transition very quickly, others not so much. I'm working on a video right now where I'm asking students across the country to send in testimonials on how this change has affected their education. So I talked to one student yesterday. He said he has a lecture hall class of about 300 people that is kind of built around this Socratic discussion style. And it's been very hard with, this video conference, students trying to chime in, to speak to their professors, to ask questions. So it's very different depending on the course. And I think it also raises the question of the cost of education. So before this crisis, we often would report on at Campus Reform just some of the costs of these questionable projects that the universities would spend money on, whether, as an example, the University of Michigan in the fall spent $10 million on a multicultural center. But again, if classes are able to go online so quickly and you're able to do all your learning from a computer, then what are these $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 tuition fees going to? And I think that's a question that's definitely worth asking. It's going to be interesting to see what they do in the future with regards to this online learning.
Eduardo, if the interest rates, if they get cut on your student loans, you don't have to pay those high interest payments, and that comes from the administration, and that actually plays out. If that does that help? Is that enough? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's certainly helpful, but my concern is that students won't realize that it's happening because of a crisis. So they may get used to the idea, again, of being able to borrow so much money and not having to pay it back so soon. Again, in theory, what the White House is trying to do is to inject economic aid to a lot of these families. I think what we could do right now is pressure these colleges and universities, if they're financially able, is to refund these students. So Congressman Gooden has been very vocal about this in the House of Representatives. He's calling for these colleges and universities to really pay these students back for the dorm money that they paid for in advance. And just so some of your viewers know, I mean, these are fees paid at the beginning of the semester. It's not like rent that you pay at the beginning of each month. So if students could get the money back there, I think it would be very helpful to their economic viability.
Real quick,
right now.
Before we go, I have a few seconds with you. Do you know anyone with the people that you know there, other students, do they have coronavirus? Have you seen anyone with coronavirus? Have you heard anything about that in your circle of friends and contacts?
I personally don't know, but we have seen some schools right now reporting that they have seen their students get in contact with coronavirus. A lot of universities, too, have hospitals on their campus as part of their medical schools. Yeah. A lot of those hospitals are treating coronavirus patients, so it is on the campuses right now.
Interesting. All right. Eduardo Neret, digital reporter at Campus Reform. Always a pleasure. Thanks, sir.